Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast for Zombie Part 1. The opening of this episode was very cool, very fun. It reminded me of the Halloween specials, Degrassi of the Dead, which aired, a few years ago. Very cool, to see that, and I love how they've been working on this movie for a while now. And, we've got to see it throughout the process, and, as it's getting down to the wire. So, a very cool opening, very enjoyable. The Maya storyline tonight, I have to say I really enjoyed it a lot. She is probably right now my favorite character on the show. Of course, we had more Cam references tonight, and, we finally got to see what Maya is going through. We haven't really been focused on her since, before the whole suicide actually happened, and we have been exploring the viewpoints of other characters and what they had been going through. And now we got to see Maya, and, she's acting out. She's sort of acting, a little bit slutty, like Katie said. And she says that she's fine, but obviously she's not fine because she is acting so different. But, it is great to see. It makes for very interesting for her character. And it was just great, at the party, she's hanging out in bed, with this guy, and this girl, and the girl's taking a video of it, and, the whole interesting thing about it all is that, Maya was the one who actually decided to send out the video and make it public. A very different change from what people would expect and things that have happened before, and they kind of flipped it, and now, Maya is essentially responsible for her own demise and, whatever will happen in next week's episode. Drew running for president, I enjoyed this as well. It was pretty good. The whole thing with Claire at the party and, pushing Drew into the pool, a little bit cheesy, but the party scene was great. Degrassi is always known for, throwing some pretty great party scenes and episodes and that type of thing. And, of course, we had Maya at this party as well. But, the whole thing with Drew and Bianca and the president thing, I do like that. I thought from the preview it was going to be kind of, not that interesting, kind of boring, but it actually is, something that I am looking forward to. I want to see, what is going to happen, and now Drew is sort of taking it more seriously and, changing his ways. Kind of started off with the whole JT vibe, being the jokester and, trying to make, Degrassi a fun place. So I definitely like that, and I do want to see what will happen when him and Claire go head-to-head when they are both actually trying and they actually want to be president. And finally, we had the issues with Connor and Jenna. Jenna has been one of the most annoying characters, in my opinion, but, she wasn't too bad in this plot. I loved the scene with Allie and Jenna gossiping about, Eli and Claire, and Connor just in the background, coughing, and how it cuts into his Jenna time. I really like Connor and Jenna together. I hope they don't break up right away. It's like you put them together and now you're already, taking them apart. But, I like the whole thing, Connor trying to help, but, he's still not exactly sure of what the right thing to do is and how exactly, to go about it. But he just wants to spend time with Jenna. He really likes her, and, it's understandable, especially because he doesn't have a lot of experience, and of course with, all the situations and, everything, that he's been through. All in all, tonight was a pretty solid episode. It was fun, a lot of interesting things. I just love that after the suicide, so many ripple effects, so many people it is affecting, and how, they bring it up, but not to, just, bring it up. It actually makes sense to keep the way they're discussing it and how they are, slowly letting things, all play out, and definitely excited for next week's episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and I'll talk to you on next week.